Hello, Gio. Thank you so much for joining me in this interview today. Gio is one of our awesome platform engineering ambassadors. She took our awesome practitioner course and is one of the people that I basically like to reach out to whenever I can for everything that I can, especially on the big topic that we're talking about today, security. Security really is one of the fastest growing kind of domains within the platform engineering community. People who have been watching lots of our content know we had about 200,000 people who were engaged with our content last year or in January of this year. Now it's at around 270,000. And most of that is people with security backgrounds, observability backgrounds who are now entering the platform engineering domain. So no better person to talk to about this than Gio. So Gio, how about you just give us a quick round of why do you get to be here? Why are you the expert I love to call on?
Oh dear. Hello, Sam. Thanks for calling me. And hi, everyone. So, yeah, I've been working at Dashlane for the past 4 years. I'm VP of engineering there, and specifically, I look after the teams that are really focused on platforms actually, and sort of capabilities that we like to build for our fellow colleagues on the product development side. So when we think about platform engineering, and when platform engineering kind of emerged, it was really fantastic for me because I thought finally I didn't have to sort of engage in complicated methods to persuade people to look at my options. All of a sudden I had actually a sort of a toolkit. My teams could rely on some tangible products, and we could slowly demystify or explain DevOps principles in ways where people could actually see what those meant. So in my world, my biggest challenges have remained raising awareness around security, getting people to think a little bit more about what they're developing. Going fast is important, but making sure that what you do actually is not going to be a problem tomorrow is also important. Being able to think on your feet when actually things do happen, like you have incidents. All of these things were things that really matter to me and matter to my teams day in, day out. And I kind of can't think of anything else but platform engineering as being the best solution to that for me. So I'm quite happy to talk about platform engineering in the enterprise context when you're working with security or when you have challenges of those types.
That's why you're here. No better person to be talking to. So let's jump right into it. I was just throwing some pretty big numbers around, but basically it's tens of thousands of security people now thinking about platform engineering. Why is that? Why has security suddenly really woken up to the value of platform as an operating model?
I think the security world has been kind of isolated for quite some time. Slowly got closer thanks to the principles that were sort of distributed around DevOps. They started understanding the benefits of having observability in place, for instance. And so with that, the next step naturally has become platform engineering. And I'll give you some examples. In security, often what you have to do is try and build security awareness. So typically everyone will go for the, security champions solution, which is you identify a few people in the organization on the platform, on the product development side, some engineers. You get them to get really excited about security, and you kind of hope that those people are going to be your champions to make sure that their team is not going to do some hideous, ludicrous thing in terms of security. Now that could work, but 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work, simply because the pressures that those teams are under, the cognitive load, the context and the complexity that we have to deal with today with building platforms and architectures for fast markets. It makes it so that they just haven't got the time to really do all the things they really wanted to do, like be a champion for security. So where platform engineering comes in is that you can actually bake security principles in the foundations. And so the templates that you're asking the rest of the engineering organization to use already come with those security controls. So the sort of the persuasion part of, hey, you need to do things properly becomes secondary because it's just how it is, it's just how it is. And that's one example where I think that's the reason why security is starting to become more interested, because it takes away the having to beg someone to care about your areas, and there's so much begging happening in corporations these days. Oh, please do this. Oh, please do that. It's just not something that we like to do, to be honest, like to get work done, and not necessarily ask people for favors.
Yeah, I used to work at quite a huge corporation, and the amount of begging that has to get done. Please follow this governance framework. Please read the rule set that I have written out, or this documentation. Really never happens. So I want to zoom in a little bit more on the DevOps versus platform engineering thing. I wore my DevOps is dead t-shirt at AWS reInvent. I got a lot of thumbs up. I got some pretty venomous comments on that. Now, I'm not anti-DevOps at all, but I'd love to zoom in a little bit more on kind of that transition from DevOps into DevSecOps, now into thinking about kind of security platform engineering. What are the gaps there where platform engineering might be fulfilling things in a better way?
I'm gonna use a common example that is not unique to security, but is unique to every single business context out there that has like digital presence, and that's incident response. Thinking about DevOps, the principles were great. They introduced this idea of like incident response, logging, alerting, the observability that I mentioned, the sort of the process around what you do, the grading of an incident, which is all great. But where things got a little bit fuzzy was, well, who decides the assessment of an incident, or who decides on the template of the incident case? Who decides if this even should be something we should add an alerting or monitoring to? Now, it basically led people to believe that every team, you build it, you run it, this ideology that basically every team gets to do their own thing, which means that when you're actually building a single product and you need teams to collaborate together, you're reading different incidents graded in different ways, in different formats. It just gets in the way of actually preventing that incident from happening again. So in this decentralized world where DevOps principles got baked into everyone in their own way, every team, we have even more noise to deal with. We have to also deal with tribal knowledge of how to resolve incidents, which, let's be honest, is not going to be great for any company that is looking for longevity and sort of, running a business. So where platform engineering has come in, and specifically with security, is they have taken the same principles, but they've actually built a common way and a centralized way of handling an incident. So you don't have to have that weight on you to decide whether this is important or not. No, we've actually agreed on a mechanism, and that's a mechanism we're going to do. And, you can have subject matter experts to deal with an incident, but at the same time, should this be, Jim, who's been in the company for 20 years, and Jim is the only guy who knows how to handle that piece of the software? It's just not feasible, right? Everyone knows that. So I think that's what platform engineering did with DevOps. It's built sort of a tangible organizational structure that implements DevOps principles. Whereas before we had fantastic DevOps principles that were hard for us to communicate and describe to organizations. Now instead we have a very clear template. Okay, we go for this, we try for this experiment, we of course use the DevOps principles, and we watch basically, the impact. So that's an example I would have, is incidents is just a common example.
It's interesting to me, well, not interesting to me, but interesting that I want to point out to everyone that nothing there mentioned was really around tooling changes. It wasn't that platform engineering introduces, now you've got this one unified tool set. It all sounded like it's cultural changes. It's really the cultural reframing of the conversation from platform engineering. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely. And I think that's also been a miss from our side as an engineering leadership team, as engineers, to really think of platform engineering as just another method to handle your tech debt, for instance. It's not. It's literally a way to model your organization. It's a way to think about architectures that can be free to change, that are free to change. That rigidity, for instance, is something that people might think platform engineering comes with. Actually, there's nothing rigid about platform engineering, So, and therefore having an actual product, internal product that can be thought of as an enabler for other teams, well, that's pretty incredible. So, yeah, I think in hindsight, and I think it's easy now to think in hindsight, but in hindsight, like at my time when I introduced the concept of platform engineering, I think I kind of messed up a little bit, because I should have really talked more about the business benefits of it as opposed to really fixating on the sort of nitty gritty of the sort of the integrations, on the how this is going to help us engineers. I really should have really highlighted way more the sort of the business benefits.
And I think that is something that a lot of, especially people with an engineering background, tend to struggle with. Because, of course, our brains don't automatically go to things like ROI or business case. And I think that's a mistake that lots make. That was actually going to be my next question on what you would do if you were in a new organization now needing to pitch platform. But I'll take it a little bit from a different direction. Platform engineering really at first optimized on this idea of DevX, DevX, and then a bit on the infrastructure platform engineering side over the last few years. So my question would be, if you're coming in as a new head of platform, a VP of platform, and DevX is something that people are really going to be thinking about. They're really going to be thinking about the infrastructure side. When do you introduce, hey, security should be a really key domain for us as well?
You could force introduction security at the start. For instance, in the context where I am, it's unlikely that we would sort of ignore security until someone tells us. For us, security is like that baseline that defines and introduces constraints to how we build our product. But another way around this is that actually running a DevX survey, which is something that I always do, and I always ask my teams to do. We try to understand the patterns of who the engineers are, what is their sentiment towards work, and how much do you actually know about security? Because one thing is having a security engineer put you in a call and ask you, okay, what do you know? Security engineers also tend to also have a little bit of a cred of being, the ones that know the most, and the ones that you don't want to look silly in front of. So there's also that cultural bit. And so when you do a survey and you ask that question, you allow people to really truly come out in a way and sort of let understand what their vulnerabilities are around security. And it's only through that then we can actually think about building an internal platform that actually addresses the security challenges that you might have in that moment in time. Because I think the other idea is that what I discovered is that platform engineering is a clear concept. It's tangible. But what it is that the what's inside it and how your company is reacting to it and how they engage, that's constantly moving. So you could have a moment in time where there's very immature adoption of, for instance, DevOps principles. You will see that in your internal platform and you can act quickly. And then you'll have moments where actually, oh, wow, actually everyone's really keen on observability and everyone's done their own studying and they all have a really good understanding of that. And so you could sort of rein back on that. So platform engineering, in a way, within the security scope also, it gives me a chance to focus on the gaps that I truly have internally, rather than, sort of taking everyone through the journey of you got to know everything, which can be very daunting for engineers. Testing is another thing, for instance, and I guess testing and security are somewhat related, but testing is something that, especially with the arrival of AI, teams are becoming a little bit confused about, like, how do I do testing? Do I stop doing testing how I did before? Do I rely on that? Does it even matter? If I have a e-commerce product, I have to ship it quickly. Maybe I just wait to get feedback directly from customers. You have some developers that might think that way. So with platform engineering, it kind of grounds you a little bit, and it really helps you to really focus on the thing that collectively as an organization we're focusing on. So I think the DevX survey is the first step, and understanding what your average developer experience is and who your average developer is also interesting. And maybe I'm going on too much about this, but in couple jobs ago, I actually developed a whole framework to classify developers as archetypes, looking and understanding how that they would engage with even reading content, so reading RFCs or reading ADRs, engaging with these important pieces of work. I actually managed to map out who the developer population community was at that point, right? One thing is you're dealing with developers that are hyper engaged, they engage with everything, they have an opinion about everything. Another thing is when you have developers that are a little bit insecure, they don't want to be seen as the ones who don't know. You have to change your language, you have to change your targets, your leadership changes, so, and that's all thanks to putting all this information together and actually piping it through an internal product that gives you the hard data, and you also have the qual data that comes from the survey. Yeah,
it's amazing. We need to build that an article or some content pieces on that framework. I remember talking to you about that in the past, so we definitely have to hop on that. I'm curious to focus in on the security side. Security is often probably the least sexy conversation. Probably testing is the least. Security is kind of second. Security has some spice to it. So how do you then, when it comes time to talk about your feature set, you're road mapping what the 6 months, year of your platform is, and you want to focus on security, or you want to optimize for security items, how do you kind of convince your developers below, hey, this is where our attention is going to go? And how do you kind of convince your boss above, this is where our attention's going, rather than something that might have a much more clear ROI in terms of a feature set for the internal platform?
So I'm going to try and answer this, not specifically talking about Dashlane, because I think, we're in a very sort of privileged position. My boss, the CTO, totally gets security. Our CISO, past and current, are incredibly switched on. So, I mean, the obvious answer is you have a strong CISO and you have a CTO that knows what they're doing, right? But not everyone has that luxury. Not everyone can be that lucky, right? So in other cases, a good way of doing this is like trying to empathize with the developer as much as possible. I've seen security teams in the past antagonize developers, where, again, they will be like, oh, they don't understand, they don't know, and then trying to get a security champion program in place, surely that's not going to go anywhere. So empathizing with the developer as much as possible, and especially speaking way more to product managers who perhaps are not as technical as we might like them to be, but everyone understands security if you explain security in common terms. And that's the challenge, and that's also one of the reasons why security doesn't appear to be so hot and exciting as everything else, because there's a special language to it. There's a special value system to it, right? There's a sense of exclusion as opposed to inclusion, which, I remember having multiple discussions with my CISO about where do we draw the line around privilege. And he was completely right in saying the least amount of privilege, that's the way to go. But these things are hard to explain, to persuade developers with. No, you're not going to be able to ship to production because that's just the way it is. That's hard to say, especially after so many years of being said, CI/CD, you build it, you run it. All this very individualistic, comments have pervaded the tech world to a point where, me personally, I think it's kind of really hard to rein it back in, So what I would suggest is really leverage your DevOps principles, because actually everyone believes in those, and sort of really focus on explaining how security is something that will take you way too long to understand in the ins and outs. You've got to trust that security team. And security team knows the most about security. Happens, You're not going to stop painting a house because you think you watched a YouTube video and then, ask money for it, right? So unless it's your house, sure, but you're not going to go out and start doing a job that you never really trained in before. So we've also got to respect expertise in that sense. And I think the internal product that platform engineering has proposed is a great tool to use, because finally someone can look at something rather than look at each other and have this really weird sort of ego challenging conversation between security engineer and not. But talking is really important. So on the security side, I would say, making sure that the security engineers are not antagonizing developers. They're not just focusing on talking to their lot. They should be talking to business partners, should be talking to product managers. We did an exercise which actually I really loved, and I think I never really thanked the security engineer that did it enough. But we did an entire day was dedicated to basically doing threat modeling. I organized an offsite with all my teams, and we had an entire day that was threat modeling. And I I had one of the security engineers basically lead that session, and we were all doing threat modeling. It didn't matter whether you were a tester, whether you were an architect. Everyone can get it, if the right person is explaining it. So if you don't have the luxury of being able to have that type of security engineer that can explain things, or that time to do an offsite specifically for threat modeling, you can certainly find ways of crystallizing the security message in simple terms that then platform engineering can help you sort of manage, as the internal tool.
Amazing. I want to flip that on its head now. So we did our state of platform engineering survey and our state of AI platform engineering survey. I think we've done a good job of not talking about AI too much for the first 20 minutes of this. We're obviously going to get onto AI pretty soon. But before we do, we of course ask about relationships with security teams, around governance, around guardrails, and a pretty significant contingent, around 20% of those surveyed, felt that their security teams were too strict to the point of absurdity. Now I'm adding that part on there, but in the conversations, and felt that there wasn't this kind of relationship of figure out how we can do this. It was very much security says this is what goes, and then we're really steadfast. So I'd love to understand, what your advice would be. So both as as a team lead, how do you kind of nurture those more, supportive relationships between the wider team and security? But then maybe also you as the individual, how would you think from the security perspective, and how would you maybe persuade a security person if you even can?
Yeah, I think the first thing is always quite interesting that when surveys are done, they're always about how the product engineering world or how developers feel about security. It's never the other way around,
Yeah.
So I think just that from a, let's say, I don't know, maybe an anthropological point of view, maybe that should make us ask, okay, why are we always asking them about them, and so I want to introduce a few things that actually may not be obvious to people working in the sort of product development world. First of all, the architectures we have these days are completely wild. The complexity is completely it's broken everyone's minds. We have AI, you've got data, you've got all kinds of things. So you have this idea of and also you have a lot of cloud, because everyone wants to use services. So you have this combination of complex architectures built by people that are come and go, because talent is constantly coming and going, multi-cloud. And so this is literally a security governance problem. And now we have a small team that's typically always been quite small, overloaded with this, oh my Lord, what the hell is going on? That's the first, we have to understand. That's where they are. The second bit of where they are is regulatory pressure is continuous. It's not episodic. So it's not a matter of saying, oh, we need to hit SOC 2 and that's it. No. At one moment it's SOC 2, then it's ISO this, then it's that, then it's GDPR. No one else is really obsessing over these things, but that tiny little team of security experts, they're the ones that basically are on, they're on the line for that stuff. They're the ones that know this stuff inside out, and they have to constantly study what the new pressure is for. The other thing that I think we forget about, which is kind of connected with the first point, is in these highly complex systems, we also have been building technology for longer, which means we've got really big, fat legacy systems that nobody knows anything about anymore. And that's a disaster waiting to happen. And I know it sounds a little bit like Cassandra's, for others, but if you think as a security engineer who's been trained and is an expert and knows exactly actually the weight of these things, this is a really ungrateful job. So imagine when you're starting off with that, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of developers asking you to do this and this and this and this, and now you also want a security engineer to be, empathetic and, talk to others. I mean, naturally they start thinking, hey, you're asking a bit for too much. You want me to be an expert. You also want me to be a communicator. It's a big ask. Sure, it would be great for security engineers to explain these challenges tangibly and spend the time to explain these challenges. But it would also be great to see developers actually understand the lightweight of the security challenge. We don't need them to become security experts, but actually we just need them to understand the challenge, the reality we live in, we're not worried about whether the product manager is happy or not. Most of the times we're worried whether we're going to hit, whether we've got SOC 2 done in time, and the risk is different. Connection matters. I always suggest having like a sort of collab sessions where, you have a security engineer, like maybe a team working together, maybe on a particular part of the product that's particularly iffy. Some of my colleagues like to do this thing where basically they'll pick a ticket, and if a ticket is sort of interesting to security, they will actually work on it together and pair on it together. It works for some companies, it doesn't work for others. But, ultimately, I think what security teams really benefit from is having a sort of an aid in communicating these challenges, an aid in sort of like simplifying their world to others, because their world is complex by themselves, and it's also made more complex by other people's world. So that's why I kind of like think platform engineering is a great solution for security teams, because they can leverage something that's built for, human consumption, which they didn't necessarily have to build themselves. And they can bake in all the rationales, all the explanations in there, And then if someone is truly interested in understanding, but actually, how does SOC 2 work, then, you can take them on the journey. But it's exhausting as a security expert to have to explain ins and outs every day to every single new developer in this kind of wild war of like, you're telling me no, explain why. And I have also been in those situations. I have to come clean. I've been in situations where I was fighting with my CISO for stuff, and it's only now that I realize, like, oh good lord, like I've really driven him around the block, like crazy. Like I should have given him. Oh God. I mean, sure, he could have been nicer about things, and I guess I was fixating about things, but that's where the relationship comes in. So I think platform engineering is a great solution, really, really great solution, because it kind of moves away all the stuff that would take you ages to explain, and it kind of leaves a space for a true human relationship, which I think can never go away, even with an internal product.
Amazing. I'm curious then to zoom in on the AI side of things, because all that stuff you talked about, the complexity, the risk, legacy systems, data, regulation, AI is all of that times 10. And so I think it's no surprise that so many of the new security people coming into the community asking questions, it's coming from the cause of an AI approach. So I'd love to get a few minutes of your kind of experience on how AI has kind of reshaped things. I know in the State of AI Platform Engineering report that I wrote that we published a few months ago, a lot of security teams were kind of struggling with how to approach governance and guardrails. So either being too strict and kind of stifling experimentation, or, for fear of being strict, not really being strict enough and causing some kind of risk vectors there. So I'd love to kind of hear how you've approached this AI explosion and where you think we might be going from here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to first say, disclose that this is my personal opinion, right? And in no way represents the opinion of the company I work at or have worked at. And I'm also myself trying to understand. I'm going to be honest. I'm also in two minds, because I've had this conversation in the past where I'm not sure we still have enough data to really understand the value of AI. I know, it helps my husband work, it helps him write things, cool. It helps me write things, cool. But beyond that, it's just a little bit fuzzy to me, So when it comes down to the world of like sort of AI tools to help like development and to go faster and be more productive, I kind of challenge that a little bit, because I do think it's helping some types of developers, but it's not helping others. And that's where I go back to my initial point of understanding who your internal population is, and almost doing an ethnographic analysis of who your company, who your engineers are, what kind of sentiment do they have towards new things or not. And And with security, naturally, you'll end up with a lot of security engineers that are reluctant to support AI products, especially that have just been built in what, couple months? I mean, the plethora of like AI tools to bump up your productivity. I'm not just talking about developer productivity. I'm also talking about all the other requests that are coming from other departments, right? Everyone wants like the app that will sort of transcribe everything. Okay, cool. But which one? There's like 30 to choose from. How do you analyze all of those? So I just think there's so much right now that everyone is experimenting with everything. And the experiments aren't necessarily, in my opinion, well designed, because even an experiment, can be well designed, unless we just want to go for the random approach. And in that sense, I actually would welcome a random approach for pieces of the architecture where maybe there's this very low risk. So that's also a way of doing it. But I've seen companies make humongous use on AI tools that have not got a lot of, they haven't got many months under the belt, not in testing, nor in actually existing. So that to me, I don't know. That's not something we would normally do. You wouldn't normally just, I don't know. I don't know. I can't think. It just seems a little bit too much and too fast, let's say. But it could also be my age.
I think that is the ultimate statement to capture everything when it comes to the topic of AI. It's too much and it's too fast.
Maybe.
So I think we're both bang on there. But thank you so much, Gio, for everything on the security landscape. This is, one of the biggest and fastest growing topics in the platform engineering discipline, and I get asked about it all the time. And there's no better person to have come and helped me understand. So thank you so much, and thank you everybody for watching. And hope you're doing well wherever you are. See you next time.
Bye bye. Thank
Bye.
you.